Hello, and welcome back to Bombchu. Today we'll be taking a look at the Humble Choice bundle from December 2020. Humble Choice has officially been around for a year now. Did Humble bring us a bag of goodies worth celebrating? Let's dive in and find out. This month's Humble original is The Corridor, a game that does not want to be played. You start in a corridor with a door and a button. The door is locked, and pushing the button closes the game. Each time you reopen the game, something is different. That's really about as much as I think I should say about this one. It's really best to go play it yourself, which I can wholeheartedly recommend if you enjoyed the Stanley Parable. This game made me laugh very hard at some points, and just kept surprising me. I really can't wait to play more, and if you pick up this month's bundle, please give it a try. Path of Giants is a chill puzzle game where you control 3 explorers seeking treasure. You click on the explorer you want to control, and then click where you want them to go. Simple as that. However, they will need to help each other up and down from ledges, which is where the core of the puzzling comes from. Placing an explorer below a ledge will allow others to climb up and down. Each of them must reach an end panel matching their color to move on to the next puzzle. As you get further, you'll find ladders, teleporting doors, and color-coded switches to move platforms around, which are all required to get everyone where they need to be. It sounds really simple, but I found myself having a lot of fun with it, and so far I haven't felt stumped, but I also haven't felt like I've been going through a total cakewalk. The graphics are lovely to look at, the music is very calming, and the interface is satisfying to work with. I really look forward to playing more. Struggling is a co-op physics platformer where you and your partner control 2 arms of one being. You control a blob man that seems to be part of a lab experiment. All the scientists are drunk and accidentally let you escape, so you'll need to make your way through the lab, avoiding all the other escaped experiments, which all seem to want to kill or eat you. As I mentioned before, you and your partner each control one of the blob's 2 arms. Each arm can grab and move, so you'll have to work together and communicate to swing where you want to go and avoid danger. I played this with my wife, who found it gross and seemed to be a bit frustrated by the controls, but we were also having some good laughs. I don't think she'll play it with me again, but if you have someone you like to play games with locally, or don't mind using Steam Remote Play or something similar, it's definitely worth giving it a shot. It unfortunately doesn't support proper online play, so if you can't get anyone to play local, or you have problems using remote play, there is a single-player mode where you control both arms with each side of the controller. It still works, and there's still fun to be had, but it definitely seems like co-op is the intended way to play through this one.
Still There is a point-and-click adventure game from developer Ghost Shark Games and released in 2019. Still There is the story of a man named Carl, who works in a sort of space lighthouse. Just like the lighthouses here on Earth, he's working almost completely alone, with the occasional email and sarcastic insulting AI being his only company. Carl's days consist of doing menial but complicated tasks as he maintains the station, scans stars and constellations, and screens various radio broadcasts. Gameplay is what you'd expect from a point-and-click adventure game, but with a limited emphasis on the adventure part. You seem to be mostly limited to the small station, at least for the early parts of the game I've seen so far, so there's technically not a lot of traditional adventuring to do. What is traditional, however, is Still There's approach to puzzles and problem solving, at least in the point-and-click spirit of things. Puzzles and tasks can be incredibly complex, with something as simple as making coffee or going to the bathroom involving a lot of gathering items, finding the area that has the thing you need, using the correct item on the correct thing in the correct order, and on and on and on ad infinitum. When you get to the more complicated computer tasks, you'll be referring to a technical manual that I can technically read, but was unable or maybe just vehemently unwilling to comprehend any part of. Everything about the moment-to-moment gameplay of Still There is frustrating and complicated, and just makes me feel like an idiot trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole, only to find out that I'm not even supposed to be using pegs at all. If the developers wanted to make the player feel stupid, well, at least in my case, they've certainly done a stellar job. One of the main strengths of the game seems to be the story, setting, and general atmosphere. The game definitely does a great job of making the player feel truly isolated, sad, and sort of meandering through their day-to-day life with no general purpose. It reminds me a lot of the movie Moon with Sam Rockwell, which if you've never seen it, definitely seek that one out. However, when the mechanics of the actual gameplay are so complicated and simply not fun to engage with, no amount of good writing or tone setting is going to make me want to spend any time with a game. Still There is not a bad game. The writing, setting, and overall story are the strongest elements here, and while I absolutely hate the overly complicated design of the puzzles and the general gameplay, every aspect of it does feel very deliberate and intentional by design. If you're into point-and-click adventure games, and don't mind slogging your way through the gameplay in order to get to an intriguing story, you would benefit from giving Still There at least a shot. For people like me who like point-and-clicks but aren't in love with some of the more archaic gameplay elements or overly complicated mechanics, Still There is going to end up feeling more frustrating than it is satisfying.
Frog Detective is a cartoony first-person perspective adventure game where you play as a frog, trying to solve a mystery. You do this by talking to people, asking them questions, and helping them with things that they want to get things you need. It's pretty simple, but what sets Frog Detective apart is its presentation. The visuals and the dialogue are silly in a way that made me laugh out loud many times. It's pretty easy and straightforward, with the area you're exploring being pretty small, and there not being a ton of people there to have to talk to and keep track of. It ends up clocking in around 40 to 60 minutes, and doesn't overstay its welcome. Frog Detective 2 is more of the same, with a new mystery and a new location with new people to talk to. You also now have a notebook so you can take notes on people you meet, marking down possible motives and needs that they have. This sequel also turned up the humor a bit, and rewards you for having played the first game, so I do recommend playing them in order. This one is also pretty short, but a little meatier, coming in at around twice the length of the first Frog Detective. I'm looking forward to breezing through these on a rainy Sunday afternoon in the near future. Tabletop Playground is Tabletop Simulator. Seriously, what the hell? There's a more popular version of this game already available. Okay, let's dig in a little. Oh no, for real, every moment I was playing, I felt like I was playing Tabletop Simulator. Only there was almost no one playing online, and a lot less games available on the Steam Workshop. The controls, the interface, the menus, I have seen all of this before. I will say, certain things work a bit better, like stacking cards for example. In Tabletop Simulator, I can drop a card pretty much perfectly on a deck, and there's still a good chance it'll just fall on it like a physics object, instead of properly rejoining the deck. But here, if I hovered a piece or a card over a spot where it would get pulled into a proper space, or back into the deck, it would highlight that spot so I could tell it would snap into place before dropping it. Little improvements like this would go a long way in Tabletop Simulator, but a game like this needs a sizable player base to have good mod support and a good community of people to play with online. And this game just doesn't have it. Who knows, maybe this bundle will give it the boost it needs, but I wasn't encouraged when I struggled to find anyone to play with while gathering footage for this video.
Zwei, the Arges adventure, is an action RPG from developer Nihon Falcom and released in 2007. Zwei places you in control of two siblings, or maybe just friends, Pipero and Pakal, in the world of Gran Valen. Magic was once a dominant force in the world, but some modern technology such as airplanes have started to take priority. While exploring their home village, a mysterious man enters a shrine and steals 6 goddess statues, the village's most sacred treasures. In typical RPG fashion, it's up to our plucky, young, and wacky adventurers to retrieve the 6 sacred artifacts, save the day, and probably grow up along the way, or something like that. Gameplay is more reminiscent of a dungeon crawler than a typical RPG, and will look familiar to anyone familiar with the East series of games. You control one of 2 characters at any time, with Pakal using his lance to dash at enemies, while Pipero uses her magic. Let's see. What else? The art style is charming, I suppose. The big-eyed chibi anime look helps to establish the tone and does look nice, even if it's not technically all that impressive. The music's not bad, but also isn't anything worth writing home about. Overall, the Arges adventure is just underwhelming in almost every aspect. The game feels incredibly dated, even by 2007 standards. This feels more like a game that you'd see on the PlayStation 1 in the late 90s, and even in that context, it would still have some stiff competition. The writing is incredibly bad, with the kids' dialogue being overly zany and trying way too hard to try and connect with the youth what that plays them their video games. Movement and combat feels like it's accidentally running at 2 times speed, and it makes it almost impossible to keep track of what's happening on screen. I really don't like this game, and I can't really imagine who I would recommend this to. Maybe the sequel's better? Zwei, the Ilvard Insurrection is an action RPG developed by Nihon Falcom and released in Japan in 2008, with the English version releasing in 2017. The Ilvard Insurrection takes place in the same kind of world as the Arges adventure, where technology and magic coincide amongst a world of floating continents. The story opens with Ragna, a pilot and treasure hunter, being attacked by a mysterious person and her pet dragon, leaving him to crash into the continent of Ilvard after a short confrontation. Luckily, Ragna is saved by Alwyn, some kind of vampire demon princess, who has also secretly formed a blood contract with him. This has saved his life, but left him in debt to her. For repayment, Alwyn demands Ragna's help recovering her magic powers and taking back her castle. Right away, the writing in Ilvard Insurrection is much better than the first game. While it's certainly not stellar, at the very least I'm not immediately repulsed by the main characters. There's some poor writing here and there, but I still managed to get somewhat invested in the story. It helps that the game seems to have at least a semblance of self-awareness and just how ridiculous the setting and scenario are. It's not that the game is meta or self-referential in any kind of way, but they definitely realize how silly the idea of a treasure-hunting pilot entering a blood debt with a vampire princess actually is. The gameplay is also similar to the first, with the major change being the transition from sprite-based 2D to 3D dungeon crawler instead. You control both characters at the same time, with you swapping between them on the fly depending on which attack button you press. Ragna handles the up-close and personal attacks, with Alwyn providing magical attacks from a distance. The speed of combat and general gameplay is definitely more manageable when compared to the dungeon crawler on crack speed of the first game. Not that the gameplay is easy, mind you, as if you just charge into battle without paying attention, you will die. It just feels much more fair and actually fun to engage with here. While I'm still not a huge fan of this series, Ilvard Insurrection makes a lot of quality of life improvements that go a long way towards keeping me engaged. It still feels somewhat dated, which is a given from a game from 2008, but the extra layer of polish, charm, and added gameplay elements make me more comfortable recommending this game to fans of dungeon crawlers and other similar genre titles like the Ys series. I'll be putting at least a little bit more time into the Ilvard Insurrection. Shining Resonance Refrain is a JRPG from developer O2 Inc. The original was released as a Japanese-only PS3 exclusive in 2014, with the Refrain version releasing in 2018. Shining Resonance Refrain takes place in Sega's Shining series, most well-known and well-regarded for the Shining Force games. Resonance takes place in the Kingdom of Astoria, and places you in control of Yuma, a stereotypical Bishonen-style protagonist with a secret dark power that he is afraid of unleashing. After being broken out of a prison where he was being experimented on, Yuma joins Astoria's war against the Empire. I'm gonna keep this one short and sweet, as I really don't like this game. Like, at all. From the start, it's such a stereotypical JRPG that follows every anime trope and cliché in the book. There's some nice flow to the combat, with you moving around the field in real time and unleashing different combos and magical attacks. It feels reminiscent of the Tales series or modern-day Final Fantasy, and while it's not terribly complex, it does get the job done. However, most of the battles are pretty short, and when you're not in a battle, you're simply watching people talk via text. And they talk a lot. And it's all just mind-numbingly basic writing that I simply can't force myself to pay any kind of real attention to what's going on. At least not enough for me to actually give a damn about these characters or this world. When Yuma's having a conversation with the dark force in his head and saying things like, "I can't use that power. Maybe, just this once. I have to go all out. For my friends." It's hard to keep me from rolling my eyes straight out of my head and onto the floor. I was a big fan of Shining Force back in the day, so I was kind of excited for this title, but the rampant anime cliches drove me away almost instantly. Fans of the genre might find something to enjoy here, but with a plethora of other much better RPGs available, even just in this bundle, it's hard to recommend this one to anyone in particular. One thing's for sure, I definitely won't be spending any more time with these walking cliches. Indivisible is an action RPG platformer from developer 505 Games and released in 2019. Indivisible has players taking control of Ajna, a feisty teenager being raised by her mysterious adoptive father, Indir. Indir was part of a group that defeated a goddess called Kala, with him finding baby Ajna afterwards and raising her in a small village. Before long, his past catches up with him, and Ajna is forced to watch as her village is burned and her father is killed. Ajna then begins her quest to confront the people responsible for her father's death, as well as unlocking her own hidden potential. Indivisible features an incredible hand-drawn art style, which really helps bring the world to life in a vibrant, lively way. Playing Indivisible feels like progressing through an anime, especially during the cutscenes. The music also helps to set the mood, and fits the scenes and battles perfectly. The writing is really stellar so far as well. Ajna and her party members are very funny and well-rounded, with early party member Rosmi definitely being my favorite so far. I just absolutely love her sarcastic, dry, and slightly psychotic personality. Whenever Ajna meets one of these party members, they don't just follow her around like you would expect from a normal RPG. Instead, they actually go into her inner mind. Your first party member even seems to be forced there, becoming a reluctant part of your group. It's one of the more odd elements of the story and setting so far, but it's executed in such an entertaining way that it feels very refreshing and original. Gameplay is part platformer and part action RPG. Ajna progresses through stages via running, jumping, wall jumping, climbing, and using other abilities to navigate obstacles. The level design definitely feels like a Metroidvania-style game, with obstacles blocking certain paths until new and upgraded abilities are obtained. It isn't too overwhelming at the start, and I'm hoping that stays consistent through the majority of the game, as I'm not a huge fan of backtracking my way through old levels, trying to remember where that blocked-off area was when I first came through. When you approach an enemy, the action RPG element kicks in as it switches to a sort of Final Fantasy ATB style of combat. Each player in the party will build up their meter over time, and waiting longer allows them to execute more attacks and combos at once. Each character has different types of attacks that can be unleashed with a combination of a direction and their corresponding attack button, and this helps to add a lot of variety to the combat. When the enemy attacks your party, you can actively defend against these attacks with a well-timed press of a button, adding even more depth to the battles. It feels very reminiscent of the Paper Mario series, which is definitely something I can vibe with. Overall, I absolutely love Indivisible. I had been following the game's progress on Kickstarter and via several different artists' Twitter and Tumblr pages, and I could tell right away that it was something I was going to love. Now that I've finally gotten the game through Humble, I can't wait to sink more time into this one, and I highly recommend everyone check it out as well.
The Beast Inside is a survival horror game from new developer Illusion Ray Studios. In this game, you play as two different protagonists occupying the same house in different time periods. At the start, you play as Adam, a codebreaker from the CIA, moving into an old house in the woods with his pregnant wife. Here, you'll get to go through the tutorial for moving and interacting with objects. It's an Amnesia-style game where you drag doors and drawers open and closed, and there are items galore to examine. However, examining marked objects will provide your character's thoughts on it, and many objects have a little more to see, allowing you to rotate and check them out from a certain angle to get more thoughts from your character. Before long, you'll get to do a cryptographic puzzle, which made for a fun break from exploring the house. Inside the puzzle box, you'll find the disturbing diary of Nicholas, the other protagonist. You relive his memories, written down in the late 1800s, as you deal with terrors invading the house, or the demented imaginings of a crazed man. It's unclear which. As Nicholas, you don't have a flashlight or electronics to help light your way, so you'll have to find matches that provide light for a very short time, or kerosene for a lantern. Both can be used to light candles, which provide a nice zone of comfort in the dark, dark house. Horror games, especially from brand new developers, can easily go really bad. But this game doesn't feel janky, and exploring the house as two different people in two different time periods is interesting, especially with how different the game feels in each time. If you hate horror, this game is probably not going to change your mind, but in a sea of many bad horror games on PC, this one feels like it's a good standout. And despite screaming a few times while playing it, I find myself looking forward to playing more. One Step from Eden is a deck-building roguelite, but it's action-oriented and takes place on a grid. I played through a demo of this back in the March bundle review, so I've copied some of my description from there. If you're familiar with the Mega Man Battle Network series, you'll immediately notice some big similarities. Your cards are loaded in at random and attached to your A and B buttons. You have to have enough mana to use any given card, and mana regenerates over time. If you're low on mana, you can hold down your attack button to do a free weak attack as much as you want in order to get a little extra damage in while you wait for your mana to come back. When you use up all your cards, you hit a button to reshuffle your deck and keep going till you or your opponent are dead. Afterwards, you'll earn experience and pick a reward. You can play around on the field to get a handle on whatever new card you got, and when you're ready, you get to go down a branching path in the style of Slay the Spire, with all paths eventually leading to the boss. It's pretty fun, but it's very hectic. Back in March, I had a really hard time keeping up with the action, while also paying attention to what random abilities had been attached to my buttons at the moment. However, playing it again, I don't know if it got updates to slow things down, or if I was just more used to the game this time around, but I had much less of a struggle. I still kinda got my butt handed to me, but bosses were way more fun this time, with attacks that were satisfying to dodge or deal with in other ways, and I was a lot more conscious of what my attacks were, where they were going to land, and how best to use them. Also to my surprise, there's a Twitch integration to allow viewers to vote on what rewards you get, as well as if you should spare or kill bosses after defeating them. Oh, and there's co-op and PvP modes, which I'm very excited to try out. So yeah, back in March, I didn't think I'd ever want to return to this one, but I have very much changed my mind. I had a lot of fun here.
Children of Morta is an action RPG developed by Dead Mage and released in September of 2019. Players are placed into the shoes of the Bergsons, a family of warriors tasked with protecting the land. Some kind of evil corruption begins to spread, so it's up to John and the rest of his family to stop it from destroying everything. Children of Morta has a lot of charm in its story and presentation of the world. The setting feels like a cross between traditional fantasy and an almost Lovecraftian style of horror. The monsters spawned by the corruption certainly feel Lovecraftian, as does the way the corruption seeps and grows across the world. It's a very dark set dressing for the world, but it doesn't overwhelm all of your senses and make the entire experience dark and dreary. The pixel art style is incredibly charming, and the animations are smooth and pleasing to watch play out. The story is one of the more intriguing aspects so far. There's a Bastion-esque narrator to explain the story and actions as they unfold, and really helps bring a sense of gravitas to the story. In between missions, narrated cutscenes will play out that will progress the story, or simply flesh out the world of the Bergsons' family and home. Gameplay is similar to Diablo, in that you're moving around an isometric world, slashing enemies, and leveling up to gain new abilities to use in combat. When you venture out into a stage, you'll select one of the available family members to control. Each family member has a different playstyle, with unique power level and abilities to unlock. As you progress through stages, you'll be able to find different relics and other objects that can grant you new abilities, such as creating an electric field that damages enemies around you, or the added chance of stunning enemies on hit. Each time you level up a family member, you're granted a point to allocate into a skill tree, unlocking new active and passive abilities. Being able to use different family members to tackle different stages is a nice added touch, and the game definitely encourages this kind of approach. In between missions, you're also able to power up the Bergson family as a whole. Using gold found in stages, you can level up the general passive abilities of every character, allowing you to jump into a stage with a new or underleveled family member and still be able to hold your own. The layout and design of each stage is randomized, and is the only real roguelite aspect of the game, with the rest being much more similar to a traditional action RPG like Diablo. Children of Morta does have multiplayer, which allows each person to control a family member and tackle stages together, but at the moment it's local multiplayer only. So unless you have a solid enough internet connection to be able to use Steam Remote Play together, you're going to be stuck playing solo. However, the devs have stated that online multiplayer is a feature that's coming soon, so with the game's inclusion in this month's bundle, hopefully they can get that out soon to take advantage of the currently active player base. Overall, I was really impressed with Children of Morta. The story and general design of the world drew me in almost immediately, and while the combat isn't super deep or complex, it's executed well enough that it left me wanting to play more. I definitely recommend checking out Children of Morta.
Overcooked 2 is a co-op cooking game. If you've played the original Overcooked, it's a very similar game with some wild new levels, and the addition of online multiplayer along with the throwing mechanic. Things start off pretty simple with a pretty plain recipe to make. Chop something up, put it on a plate, and serve it on the conveyor belt. Your plates come back clean, and if you and your partners are always working on something, you won't have trouble getting a high score and 3 stars, which is the best you can do, at least for a while. However, as recipes get more complicated and levels get more convoluted, with tables moving and natural disasters occurring around you, suddenly having to wash plates, it starts to get pretty difficult and stressful. Someone may be in your way or not paying attention to what you're saying when you can't reach that cake that's about to catch fire in the oven. It gets to a point where you have to strategize and bring your A game every time if you want to have hope of getting a perfect rating. But damn, is it so fun. Just remember, it's a game. Don't get really angry at your partners, laugh at the mistakes, and try again. You'll end up having a great time if the stress doesn't get to you first. This game does have a single player mode, where you control 2 cooks with 1 controller, but I really suggest you play it co-op if you can. So overall, how was this month's bundle?
Well, when you're given this many games for a single bundle, it's hard to say it's anything less than at least good. While there's quite a few traditional RPGs here, and some fairly old and dated titles like Shining Residence or the Zwei games, there's still something here for just about everyone. Indivisible is definitely the high point of the bundle for me, but I've also got more games here that I'm excited about playing than I have in almost any other bundle that's come before. Humble definitely seems to have come through for us this Christmas, and in a big way.
I had a really good time with the games I covered this month, aside from Tabletop Playground, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that game. It just needs a player base. As a fan of the Ease series, I'm very much looking forward to trying out the Zwei games. And for real, The Corridor is one of the best Humble originals I've ever played. Go try it out. Finally, 15 games? Holy crap. Humble keeps changing up the format, and I'd like to see that. This month, new Choice subscribers also get a free month of EA Play Pro, although existing subscribers get a $5 off coupon for a month of Pro, which is a really weird move. EA Play Pro is EA's subscription service, which allows you to play all of EA's latest games and several others for a monthly price of $15. It also grants access to EA's new releases 10 days ahead of launch, but ask anyone who played Anthem ahead of launch how that went. If you're a new sub, it's worth checking out for a free month, but I personally won't be using my $5 coupon. Finally, we'd like to give a big thank you to Blake Harms, Michael Slater, and all of our patrons over on Patreon. Your support means the world to us. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.